Story 1. They say the forest keeps its secrets, but I know better. I still hear the thunder, still see the shadows crossing the lightning-charged night, and even now, safe in my bed, I'm not sure we ever truly left those woods. It began with laughter, mine louder than anyone's, echoing between tall pines. We were 5. Me, my best friend Leah, her boyfriend Nate, his sister Brooke, and their cousin Sam. We'd hiked together before, but never this deep, never so far from marked trails. The old map I'd found online wasn't much help. It was meant to be an adventure, a challenge, a secret camping spot in the heart of the Blue Ridge. We started before noon, backpacks bouncing and nerves buzzing. Dappled sunlight flickered between the leaves, painting gold on our skin. Even when the trail faded, we followed Leah's compass, certain of our direction. The silence out there was thick, unbroken, except for our footsteps and the calls of unseen birds. It didn't even feel odd when the world around us seemed to quiet, as if the woods were watching, waiting. We just walked on, following each other. It was late afternoon when we realized something was wrong. The orange trail markers, bright plastic ribbons, had vanished. We doubled back. Leah's compass needle flickered, twitching as if magnetized by something unseen. We tried following the stream, but it led us into muddy thickets and tangled roots. The sunlight faded, thick clouds crowding in from the west. "We should turn back," Brooke said, her voice thin, frightened. Nate rolled his eyes. "We just took a wrong turn. Hold up, let me check my phone for signal. No service, not even a single bar." A wind gusted, cold enough to raise goosebumps along my arms. When the first raindrop splattered against my cheek, dread crept in. Within minutes, the rain was pouring, sheets of water turning the ground to slick mud. We stumbled through the trees, boots sucking into new-formed puddles. The temperature dropped so quickly that I could see my breath. The forest closed in, pressing tighter with every step. The thunder began as distant rumbles, then cracked overhead, violent and loud. Lightning flared, white-hot, burning the shapes of trees into my eyes. And just once, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Maybe it was a trick of the light, but after every flash, dark shapes seemed to slink between the trees. They moved low, almost crawling, their forms hunched, just out of sight when I turned my head. I tried not to look, focusing instead on Leah's jacket ahead of me. We had no time to set up the tent, no shelter. Huddled beneath the largest tree we could find, we pressed close. The cold stole through our jackets, numbing fingers and lips. Brooke began to shiver violently, teeth chattering in the gloom. Nate tried to start a fire, but the wood was impossibly wet. Darkness closed in, broken only by the throbbing pulse of lightning. With every clap of thunder, our world shrank. The forest felt alive somehow, the ground beneath us pulsating as roots shifted and leaves rustled overhead. The shadows between the trees grew bolder, pressing closer with every gust of wind. "We can't stay here," Sam whispered, voice barely audible over the rain. But where could we go? Every step promised just more trees, more mud, and more of those flickering shadows. Still, when a nearby branch exploded with a deafening crack and a shower of sizzling sparks, panic took over. We fled, slipping and sliding, grabbing for each other's hands, limbs aching and lungs burning. We didn't know where we ran, only that we had to move. The deeper we went, the stranger it got. The forest seemed to twist in on itself. Trees leaned over us, their branches hooked like claws. Fog pooled along the ground, swirling between our legs. At times, voices seemed to call our names, soft and urgent, but whenever we stopped, the forest fell eerily silent. Leah stumbled, falling hard. When I helped her up, her hands were ice, her face was pale, and her lips were blue. I could barely feel my own feet. We pressed on, but the cold gnawed at our bones and our breaths came sharp and fast. Every edible supply was already wet. Our flashlights died one by one, leaving us at the mercy of the storm. I kept seeing movement, just glimpses at the edge of the trees. I wasn't sure if it was animals, hallucinations, or something worse. Hours passed, maybe days. When the storm finally stopped, the world felt different, emptier. Exhausted, we huddled together until faint daylight filtered through the branches. Only then did we realize we had circled back to where we started. The trail markers hung limp and faded just where we had left them. As we staggered home, frostbitten, bruised, and terrified, I kept glancing back. The trees now seemed just trees, but sometimes at night I hear thunder rolling and I see long, hunched shadows at the window's edge, and I wonder what might have found us if we hadn't found our way out. Story 2. You don't know true fear until you meet something in the forest that's bigger, hungrier, and angrier than you. I learned that lesson the hard way, not under city lights or in the company of friends, but high in the lonely, shivering branches of a tree, with only the growl of a mother bear to keep me awake. It started as a perfect morning, the kind of dawn where the mist floats just above the trail and everything smells sharp and green. I hiked alone, like I always did, enjoying the silence. The world felt empty and new, filled with the soft sound of my boots brushing leaves and the crisp snap of branches underfoot. Solitude made me brave, maybe even foolish. I'd been walking for hours, moving quietly so I could see deer if I got lucky. The sun was barely up, orange and sleepy behind a curtain of trees. Birds were just starting their songs. I remember feeling lucky, free, as the trail curved near a stream. That's when I saw them. A flash of dark fur, 3 shapes moving in the shadowed brush ahead. I stopped, hoping for deer, but what padded into the open wasn't a doe. It was a bear, a massive brown mother, her breath white in the chilly air. 2 cubs tumbled from behind a log, clumsy, curious, so small compared to her. For a second, I just watched, struck still by awe. I should have backed away, quietly, slowly. Instead, I just stood there. Maybe I made a sound, a gasp, a crunch of leaves, because suddenly the mother's head snapped toward me, her eyes locked on mine. Cold, dark, unthinking. She rose up, showing how huge she truly was. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I remembered one thing: never turn your back on a bear. So I raised my arms, trying to look bigger, trying to show I meant no harm. Easy, I whispered, my voice shaking, but the cubs bleated a nervous sound, and the mother didn't care about reason. The ground shook in my chest as she charged, fast, fast for something that size, like thunder coming straight at me. Heart hammering, I spun and vaulted onto the nearest tree. Not tall, not strong, just thick enough for my shaking arms to wrap around. She was almost on me. Her claws ripped the bark. Her roar was so loud my ears rang. I scrambled higher, feeling the trunk tremble with her blows. The world became a blur of fur and claws and desperate breath. I pulled myself up, higher, until my legs dangled above her reach. She swiped, catching my boot. I nearly tumbled, but held on. The cubs whined from below. The mother circled, snarling, her teeth yellow and sharp. Time twisted. I clung to the branches as the sun climbed, sweat freezing down my neck. My arms ached, my feet went numb. She would not leave. Every time I dared to shift, she charged the tree, shaking it until my vision danced. Her massive body slammed against the trunk, making me gasp and pray the tree would hold. The daylight faded, slow and cruel. I watched the shadows creep across the ground. The cubs grew bored, curling up in a furry ball, but their mother stayed. She watched me with those flat, unforgiving eyes. Whenever my grip loosened, she lumbered up, slapping the bark so hard splintered. The cold seeped in as soon as the sun dipped behind the mountains. I shivered, teeth chattering. The forest became alive with sound. Crickets, the distant shriek of something unseen, the wind moaning low. Every snap of a twig nearly made my heart stop. Darkness grew thick as oil. My phone was useless. No signal, almost no battery left. I switched it off to save the faint glow for later. I tried to stay awake, terrified that I'd slip. My muscles cramped and spasmed. Down below, the bear never moved far. Her shadow crisscrossed the moonlight, always pacing, always watching. In the blackness, my mind played tricks. I imagined other eyes in the darkness, wolves, or worse. I heard shapes shifting, branches cracking, but the bear was the only thing I could be sure of. A moving shape of hunger and anger, the law of the wild given muscle and teeth. Sometimes I thought I heard voices, my sister's laughter, or my father calling me in. I knew it was just exhaustion and fear, but I answered anyway, hoping someone, something, would hear. Hours passed. The cold bit deeper. I started to wonder if this was how it would end. Bones stiffening in the tree, the bear waiting below for her due. When first light finally crept back across the sky, the mother bear huffed, licked her cubs, and at last wandered away. I waited until she was well gone, then climbed down, legs shaking. The forest felt different, emptier, but not safer. I limped home, changed forever. Now, sometimes at night, I close my eyes and hear her roar, see the cold, unblinking gaze from the base of that haunted tree, and I know the wild keeps its secrets, and I am one of them. Story 3. You never hear about the real horror of the mountains until it's too late. When the sun is gone, your breath is shallow, and every shadow seems to be whispering your name. We thought we were just a couple of friends out for one last adventure before college. It was supposed to be easy. Follow the ridge, snap some selfies, find the hidden waterfall, and be back by dusk. I never expected that by sunset, I'd have to choose between leaving my best friend to die or wandering blind into a maze of rocks and shadows. The day started bright and cool, the kind of morning you can almost taste on your tongue. Fresh pine, thin mountain air, the distant cry of a hawk. Anna hiked ahead, always a little out of reach. "Come on," she called, her voice bouncing between the peaks. I grinned, pushing myself to keep up. The trail grew thin at higher altitude, crumbling into loose stones and mossy ledges. We were high up now, the world below looking small and safe. That should have been my warning, but we were talking and laughing, and maybe that's why I didn't hear it. The sudden, sickening crack as Anna's foot slipped. I watched her tumble over the edge. Time slowed, the world spinning in silent horror. I heard her scream once, then silence as she crashed through the brush and landed hard, out of sight. Scrambling down was a nightmare. My legs shook so badly I could barely stand. When I found her, Anna was crumpled and pale, clutching her leg at a strange, impossible angle. Blood darkened the dirt beneath her. "Don't move," I breathed, but she sobbed, desperate in pain. I started to cry too, but forced myself to stop. I checked my phone. No bars. Tried her phone. Same. We had no satellite beacon, no way to call for help. The nearest town was hours away, maybe more. Panic thudded in my throat. I tore my jacket into strips, clumsily splinting her leg with sticks. Every touch made her gasp. I checked her head. No bleeding, but she was shaking, almost delirious. My mind raced. I could go for help, but I didn't know where help was. I could barely remember which way we'd come. If I left Anna alone, she'd freeze. If I stayed, we'd both die if no one found us in time. The shadows stretched longer. I found a little hollow beneath an outcrop, dragged Anna there, and tried to make us warm. We had no tent, just a tiny emergency blanket and 2 nearly empty water bottles. The night fell hard. Cold seeped into our bones. I hugged Anna tight, feeling her tremble. We barely slept, too afraid, too cold. Every sound, cracking twigs, something moving in the brush, made us hold our breath. Were there wolves here? Bears? Or just the ache of hunger and fear in my belly? "I don't want to die out here," Anna whispered. "You won't," I lied, squeezing her hand. The hours dragged, my thoughts spun wild. Should I go? Leave her? What if I lost my way and neither of us made it? What if I stayed and we both died? Would she forgive me? It started to rain, first a mist, then steady and cold. The ground turned slick and miserable. Anna drifted in and out of sleep, sometimes calling for her mom, sometimes for water. I rationed our supplies, trying not to let her see how terrified I was. My lips cracked. My fingers went numb. When the forest went silent, I knew something was watching. In the beam of my tiny flashlight, I caught the glow of animal eyes. 2, then 4, then gone. My heart thundered. I yelled into the dark, waving a stick, praying whatever it was would stay away. Eventually, exhaustion won. I must have fallen asleep because I woke to Anna moaning, her legs swollen and ugly. The rain had stopped, but the cold was worse. I had to do something. A sliver of dawn broke through the trees. I stood up, legs stiff, body shaking. I forced myself to remember the map, the shape of the land. I took Anna's hand, looked her in the eyes. I have to go. I'll mark the way with stones. I'll come back. I promise. She squeezed my hand, eyes wide with terror and trust. The climb out of the ravine was a nightmare. Branches tore at my skin, rocks slipped beneath my shoes. Every few steps, I looked back at the little hollow, the orange of Anna's jacket barely visible. My heart ached with every step that took me farther away. Would I make it out? Would I find help? Or would the mountain keep both our secrets forever, buried under cold stones and silent trees? If you ever hike alone, remember my story. Some choices stay with you forever, echoing in your nightmares, long after the mountain lets you go. Story 4. If you ever find yourself in the woods near midnight, staring at the ruins of a ghost town nobody talks about anymore, turn back. No photograph, no story is worth what waits in the shadows. We were 4. Me, my brother Jake, our friend Maya, and Sam. We all loved creepy stories, so when someone dared us to camp near Old Mercy Mine, we just laughed. The town had been dead for 100 years, people said. Miners vanished down those black tunnels, and even explorers didn't stay long. Of course, that made us want to go. We carried our backpacks past twisted fence posts, crunching through weeds taller than our knees. Rotting boards and half-crushed carts littered the earth, half swallowed by moss and dirt. Maya grinned, snapping photos with her phone. Jake joked about finding gold teeth or ghosts with missing eyes. Even the air felt strange, sour with rust and something old. We set up camp in the shadow of the mine entrance. The sun dipped low behind the hills, painting the empty windows orange. The crumbling saloon and church leaned against each other as if half awake. "Look," Sam whispered, pointing. Far in the gloom, a light flickered, then vanished. At first we thought someone else must be camping nearby, but there were no voices, no signs of a car or tent, nothing but those quick, darting flashes behind broken doors and dark windows. As night swallowed the woods, an uneasy silence grew. Even the wind stopped. We lit a fire, tried to laugh it off. Maya played soft music on her phone, the blue glow weird against her face. Jake wandered between the ruins, feet crunching on glass. That's when we heard it, the whispering, long, low, just on the edge of hearing, like wind in a tunnel or someone breathing secrets you don't want to know. Sam's face turned pale. "Did you hear that?" We listened. A voice, no, more than one, sliding through the dark. My blood turned cold. Every hair on my arm stood straight up. I wanted to leave, but the dark outside the fire's glow was thicker than I'd ever seen. Suddenly, Jake stumbled back, his eyes wild. "There are people out there," he hissed, pointing into the deep black between 2 ruined houses. We stared, frozen. For a heartbeat, I saw them. Tall, shapeless shadows, shifting just beyond the reach of our fire. They didn't move right, like they were sliding more than walking. Panic set in. Maya pulled out her GPS, hands shaking, but all it did was spin, the screen flickering with impossible coordinates. Sam tried his compass. The needle went wild, turning in jerky circles. "Something's wrong," Maya said. "None of this works." Jake grabbed a stick from the fire and held it out, the flames trembling at the tip. "Who's out there?" he yelled. The only answer was more whispers, closer now, circling the camp. We huddled together, hardly breathing. Out of nowhere, Sam jerked and let out a rattling scream, clutching his arm. "Something grabbed me," he shouted, shaking with terror. There were no marks, but his sleeve was cold and wet, as if soaked in fog. The night stretched endless. I saw the shadow things again and again, sometimes in pairs, sometimes alone, drifting at the edge of the crumbling saloon or peering out from the empty windows of the church. Whenever the fire started to die, they seemed to edge closer. Once, a pale face flicked in the darkness, gone as soon as I blinked. We tried to leave, fumbling for flashlights and jumbled gear, but the panic made us clumsy. Every path from camp led straight back to those same broken houses. The woods themselves felt different, pressing in until we could barely breathe. My heart rattled in my chest. I remember calling out, promising anything if we could just get away, but still, the whispers followed. When the fire finally died, cold spilled in, thicker than any night I have known. Fingers brushed my shoulder. I spun. Nobody there, just the shifting dark and eyes I couldn't see. Somehow, we survived the night. I don't remember sleeping, only the waiting, and the feeling that something watched us from everywhere at once. The morning sunlight looked sickly, greenish. We stumbled from camp, barely talking, and finally, somehow, the GPS worked. We ran until the haunted town faded, the path behind us empty. We never spoke of Old Mercy Mine again. Not really. Sometimes I still hear those whispers in my dreams. They say spirits wander where they suffered. I believe them now. If you see lights between ruined buildings, turn back. Some towns die angry, and not all their ghosts want to be forgotten. Story 5. The mountains are beautiful, majestic, silent, and cruel. But nothing about climbing a high ridge prepares you for the moment the earth itself decides to fight back. We were a family of 5. My parents, my 2 younger sisters, and me. It was supposed to be a celebration, a summer trek on a famous ridge high above the tree line. The air was thin, but the sky vast and clear. We laughed, took pictures, and shared sandwiches, unaware that minutes would turn into a nightmare none of us would forget. The trail was narrow, winding along the edge of cliffs, with nothing but empty space beneath us. My little sister Ella held my hand tighter as the wind picked up. Suddenly, the far-off calm was broken by a deep, roaring rumble. At first, it felt like thunder, but the sound grew louder, wilder, and the ground trembled beneath our boots. "Avalanche!" Dad shouted, barely audible over the rising roar. Panic exploded. We had no time to think. Rocks, ice, and snow crashed down the slope, a white and gray flood racing faster than we could run. My heart hammered as I scrambled, slipping on loose stones. My mother grabbed Ella, but in the chaos, we were ripped apart. My sister slipping behind a jagged rock, my parents trying to shield my youngest sister, Lucy. I lost sight of everyone, the dust choking my throat. Branches snapped underfoot. The ground shook like the mountain was alive and angry. I shouted their names, but my voice was swallowed by crashing debris. Finally, the torrent passed, leaving a thick blanket of snow and rocks where the trail once was. I coughed, shaky and cold, my legs numb. The wind howled a sharp, terrible whistle, and icy flakes stung my skin. I tried calling out again, hoping to hear a voice, a sign they were still alive. Hours seemed to pass in frozen silence, the sun slipping behind the peaks, turning the sky a bruised purple. My fingers were numb, my breath ragged, and darkness approached fast. Far below, other hikers shouted. Rescue teams arrived, but the snow and dust made it impossible to see or find safe paths. Every step in this white grave was a gamble. Trees and rocks shifted as if the mountain hadn't finished its rage. Fear whispered with every snap of a twig. Another slide could bury us all. I swallowed the panic, pushing through pain and cold to search. My calls broke the wind, and I clung to hope that my family was out there, just beyond my sight. I stayed awake that night, frozen in a small hollow beneath a fallen tree. The howling wind outside sounded like whispers, like the mountain was telling secrets I didn't want to hear. Morning was a silver blur. My voice cracked as I howled again, sending every ounce of strength into the air. When faint footsteps answered, my heart nearly stopped. My mother's voice, weak but alive. We reunited slowly, huddled close, faces streaked with cold and fear. Together, broken but breathing, we faced the long trek down, a battle against cold, exhaustion, and the mountain's quiet menace. That day changed everything. The mountains taught me their power, not just in snow and rock, but in the cold places inside us that fear can reach. They're beautiful, yes. But if you hear the rumble, run, because there's nowhere to hide when the mountain decides to fall. Story 6. I never believed the stories about the forest, how it could swallow you whole and twist time itself, until I found myself trapped in a fog so thick it stole the world away. I was alone that day, setting out early with nothing but my backpack and a vague map. The sun was bright at first, the trail clear beneath my boots. I wanted to escape the noise of the city, to find peace in the wild, but the forest had other plans. As I stepped deeper between the trees, the air shifted. The sunlight faded, swallowed by a creeping, unnatural fog that slithered over the ground like a living thing. At first, it was just a soft haze, but it thickened fast, so dense I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. I stopped, pulling out my compass. The needle spun madly, refusing to settle. Frustrated, I checked my GPS, but the screen flickered and died, as if the fog was eating technology. A coldness crawled through me, and I moved cautiously, each step muffled in the wet silence. Then I heard it, the footsteps. Not my own, but close, soft, brushing against fallen leaves. I spun, heart pounding, but no one was there. Just the pale gray mist and the trees, standing like silent sentinels. I told myself it was my imagination, exhaustion or dehydration playing tricks. But the whispers started next. Faint, teasing, barely audible, like someone calling my name or telling secrets I couldn't hear clearly. I stopped moving, fearful and desperate to make sense of it all. Shapes began to appear from the fog, dark, flickering forms at the edge of my vision. Were they animals, other hikers, or something else? I couldn't tell. Panic clawed at my chest, my legs ached, and my breath came in sharp gasps. I tried to shout, but my voice felt swallowed by the heavy air. I ran blindly, crashing through underbrush, branches scratching my face, heart racing. Behind me, the footsteps followed, closer now, echoing with an unnatural rhythm. Every time I glanced back, the fog seemed to thicken, hiding the pursuer. I stumbled into a hollow and collapsed, tears streaming down my face. The whispers grew loud, circling me, echoing off the trees. Was I going mad? Or was the forest alive, chasing me deeper into its nightmare? Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning. I sensed eyes watching, cold, unblinking, patient. I dared not move, fearing what I might face if I did. Finally, the fog began to lift with the dawn, revealing a forest both familiar and foreign. I found the trail again, soaked and shivering, but alive. Sometimes when the wind rustles my window at night, I swear I hear those whispers calling me back. The forest never really lets you go. It waits, lurking in the mist, hungry for the next lost soul to wander into its embrace. For more stories like this, share and subscribe Goofy Horror.